Hello, Baba, you hear me?
Loud and clear. Hi, hi, Kirill. Hi, Eva.
Hi,
Hi.
good to see you.
My pleasure, and it's pretty unfortunate I couldn't join you physically, but I'm happy that I'll be able to be with you on this. Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Раз, два, три.
So we are online now? Okay, good. Okay, so we will continue, as Jan said before, with this session on workers' rights in the UDHR and International Geneva work today. And I'm very happy to welcome our two guests for this session. Kirill Buketov, the policy officer at International Union of Food and Allied Workers Association in Geneva, is here with me in the studio. And Baba Aye, the health and social sector officer and Geneva Global Health Hub co-president and officer of PSI, is talking from his home in Ferney-Voltaire. But we'll still try to manage to come up with some kind of discussion between the three of us. Okay, so I'm very happy to have both of you here because I think during some point of this night that is already running for quite some time now, we already had some discussion on workers' rights, but I think this is the second time only that we're referring to this topic. And so I would like to ask both of you if you could just briefly present yourselves and the work you carried out in your organizations on the question of human rights related to your field of activity, which is workers' rights. And maybe we start with you, Kirill, since you're sitting next to me. Just present yourself and the work you do with regard to the human rights agenda.
Thank you, Eva. My name is Kirill Buketov. I'm working here in Geneva at the headquarters of the International Union of Food, Agricultural, Tobacco, Hotel Workers Associations, which is a very old organization. We are more than 125 years old. So we were established by the workers in a time when there was no United Nations system in existence. There was no declaration of human rights. Basically, there were only some of the human rights of today spelled out in national legislation in some of the European countries. And as part of this workers' movement, international workers' movement, we were working generation by generation to actually establish the system of universal and globally recognized human rights for the workers, because we believe the workplace is one of the points where the whole system is starting to develop. So I work in IVF almost all my life. Half of it I spent in our regional office in Moscow as a coordinator for Eastern Europe and Central Asia. But for the past 15 years, I'm here in Geneva. I'm responsible for the organizing of the workers in the tobacco sector and in aquaculture fisheries, which includes also the work on the corporate responsibility, corporate campaigning, and organizing along the value chains. So that's self-introduction.
Thanks a lot, Kirill. And Baba.
Yeah, thank you, Eva. Thank you, Eva, and good to see you again, Kirill. I work with the Public Services International, going on 8 years now. Before then, I worked for an affiliate of the PSI, Medical and Health Workers Union of Nigeria, for about 20 years. And MEWUN in Nigeria is one of 700 affiliates of PSI across 157 countries, which bring together some 30 million public sector workers. PSI itself, just like with IUF, dates the UDHR and the United Nations. It was established in Stuttgart in September 1907. And the issue of human rights, and I love that dog. Sorry, behind you, Kirill. So I'm sorry, I'm very sorry. So for us, we work on two legs as PSI. One, the issue of workers' rights, of course, is central and primary. Being a global trade union federation, be a federation of trade unions, and trade unions being the primary defense organizations of workers. But secondly, our sector, the services our members deliver, which are public services across a range of sectors, including health and social services, which is, I mean, by far the largest, local and regional governments, national administration, public utilities. It informs a particular ethos on our politics and perspectives. And that is why for us, universal access to quality public services is one of the most important rights that humans should have. And which is also very essential for building inclusive societies, for extending the democratic spirit. For me specifically, as the Health and Social Services officer, one of the things I kicked off with in 2016 when I started the work was to organize the PSI Global Human Rights Campaign for the Human Right to Health. And you know, this flows from that. Even the World Health Organization, the preamble to its constitution, had stated that, you know, the right to health is a fundamental human right. It is included in the constitution of over 120 countries, but more often than not, there are ouster clauses, and so this takes us back to how do we move, particularly for in the global south, but not only limited to these, from having it in black and white to the realization of the right to health and generally the broad corpus of the fundamental human rights of workers and of people.
Thanks a lot, Baba. So both of you refer to the year of foundation of your organizations, and it's as both of you said, long before the Declaration of Human Rights 75 years ago. Nevertheless, and I know that I think in all of the founding documents of trade union networks and trade union organizations, there's a reference to human rights, workers' rights being human rights. Could you explain, still from your point of view and from your work experience, what the relevance of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is for you today, despite having like a much longer history than that? And maybe we continue with you, Baba, and then hand over to Kirill after that.
Yeah, there's a contradictory reality of it. I used the background of two events a couple of months back of the Titanic submarine and the Mediterranean and the ship that collapsed. It kind of reflects the contradictory nature of the issue of rights. And now, first, let's be quite clear about it. The UDHR was very important in that it helped to generalize a sense of recognition, acceptance that, you know, we all have rights. And for workers, that was quite important. It's important also to note that just like with the ILO, the expansion, part of social progress has been the expansion of human rights in a sense, workers' rights and things like that. But these have not just simply been given. These have been fought for and there have been sort of concessions to maintain stability that could be ruptured if the working class people push for more. So it's not also accidental that both emerged in the wake of great wars. So now, when I point to the background, as I said earlier, some things have not changed, because the class still defines the extent to which people genuinely and workers in this case, as we talk more, go on, I'll talk more on this, can fully realize their rights, and apart from the issue of migration in relation to rights and workers, you see two different pictures here with the Titanic. The right to go into the sea was something that is taken for granted, but not with regards to the sea. But unlike before, people can speak out and demand justice for workers when these formal rights are blatantly disregarded. People often forget that even things as simple as weekends, annual vacations, paid vacations, we're not just simply given, but they are rights now. So, and with each step, the issue of generalization of respect for such rights is what the UDHR provided a leap for, which other things like the covenants on economic, social, and cultural rights and all that now built upon.
Thanks, Baba. Kirill, what's your word on this?
Yeah, well, thank you, Comrade Baba, for excellent class perspective on the issue of human rights. I would add, or try to add to this a bit more sort of humanitarian focus or humanitarian aspect, because if we just think about this, it's a universal declaration of human rights. It's not just a document, a piece of paper. This document was born after the World War, when the nations came together to discuss how this nightmare happened, what led to this. And the conclusion was that we need to spell out for ourselves and for the whole world what we consider to be human and what we consider to be inhuman. So these are the several couple of dozens of articles which are actually an attempt to give a vision of the humanity. What is human? And we shall take it in this perspective. If we're talking about, is it relevant today or less relevant? But just look at what is happening now in the world. There is, again, a new war going on in Europe. There is a war started in the East. There are rumors and information coming from different parts of the world when countries and nations are now discussing that they have now to claim the right for territory, for whatever. And it is, of course, relevant for us to look at this document from this point of view. Why human rights are important, and how it is linked to the workers' rights. Interestingly, but we need to look at a deeper historical perspective. After the First World War, there was also a discussion about how did it happen and which factors led to this. The result of this discussion was the creation of the International Labour Organization, which is the oldest agency. It was created before the United Nations was created. And ILO was created with an understanding that actually what leads to the wars is inequality, social injustice, poverty, and the understanding that if people are poor in one country of the world, that represents a risk for all the other countries, because the poor population will be easily dragged by the war propaganda into the war action. So the ILO developed this set of conventions, some of them are considered to be fundamental. Which are the fundamental conventions? The conventions which are referred to in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So this was the ground for the system of security in Europe and for the world. This is what is now under threat. And that is why it is so relevant for all of us to come together and look at this system. You know, why didn't it work as people expected it to work? If you look at this, you know, the UN declaration text, there are very nice wording, like everyone who is born as human have the right to social protection. 75 years after this declaration was adopted, how many countries actually introduce a system of universal coverage by the social protection? We are very, very far from reaching the ambition which was guiding the people who were writing this text. And I think we have to admit and recognize that we failed. We failed to achieve these aims and these ambitions which was called in this document. And we need to make a specific effort now in order to bring back this stability and security by looking at the concept of social justice. First of all, we are hearing now at different levels, there is a discussion about post-war Europe, how it will look like in when the armies are not fighting each other anymore. And in these discussions, different politicians represent their view, talking about economy, economic stability, etc., etc. Almost nowhere we hear people talking about justice. And one of the weak points of this old system of security was that it was so much focused on freedoms and liberties, which are very relevant and very important, but these freedoms and liberty do not deliver peace if it is not based on the social justice. And there is a big demand for justice now. This is what the workers of the world are increasingly talking about. And we should make this program and this political perspective better structured and better represented. And this is why this discussion is so important.
Thanks a lot, Kirill. Both of you mentioned some really important, or you made some really important points, I think, that I think we should talk more about. Baba, you made a reference to class as not being fully represented by the rights, like the class struggles. What could we do, or what are you trying to do in order to have like this deficiency of the current declaration overcome? Like what can we do to make the class struggles more present in the human rights discussions today?
Thank you very much. Well, there's a way in which it's almost well, it's not chicken and egg, but like, let me put the horse now before the cat. Yes, class questions are not fully addressed within the declaration, but it's also class struggle that throws up the need for and drafting of this declaration. And also with regards to the ILO, if it's within is it Philadelphia or it is Pennsylvania, the declaration for the ILO bit, it speaks clearly of to avoid the mass anger from the workers. And then with regards to the universal declaration, it explicitly speaks out that, look, let me try read out the part where it's explicit that it said, whereas it is essential if man, we can forgive them the gender bit here, is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. So it's like the fear of struggle from below is the beginning of wisdom. So, but the problem is where and when having won, so I mean, such fight back, I mean, not necessarily armed rebellion or whatever, but like strikes, mass protest. So this organizing power that the working class has. But with this, we have been able to win institutional power, to be able to engage in discourse, to be able to have our rights institutionally protected. But the greatest mistake, and from there I'm answering your question in a roundabout way manner. The greatest mistake, and which often is made sometimes, is to then downplay the import of organizing power for that institutional power. We need to, we can actually consolidate on the institutional recognition in truth and in deed, and not only formally, by ramping up, by working on, by deepening our organizing power, by challenging all forms of violations of the rights of workers, and standing in solidarity as we do this as a class.
Thanks a lot, Baba. Kirill, you refer to the concept of social justice, which also has a lot to do with the class question, of course. So you said that we've been talking a lot about freedoms, liberties, but not about the justice aspect. What could we do to change that discussion, or like to put more focus on concepts as social justice, or on the justice element in general?
The answer was, I think, already given by our comrade Baba. We have to organize. We have to organize better, and the working class organized have a power to change things. If we look at, again, in a historical perspective, all these rights which are spelled out in these documents were almost non-existent in Europe. In the beginning of last century, there was massive use of child labor in the mines, in the industries. People lived very poor, and when they tried to organize, they were faced with enormous pressure from the employers, the companies, and the state, which was always, in most cases, playing on the side of the corporations. Today, Europe looks different, and it's not because somebody came just and invented a document. It's because people got organized. They said, we have to put an end to this. And now, very rarely, we see child labor in Europe. Unfortunately, it still happens, but as the system which is in place was built not by papers, but by movements. And the only solution, the only possibility to build a system based on social justice is through social movements. And working class is the key element and keystone in these movements. The current system, unfortunately, and here I agree, we need to analyze the obstacles which are still in place in this system, which does not allow workers to enjoy their right to organize, which is a fundamental human right, by the way. The Article 23, I think, of the Declaration says everyone has the right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of their interests. And we're talking here, well, the word interest can be interpreted widely. We're not talking about only about the working conditions. We're talking about social interests. We are talking about political interests. And the declaration is giving us this tool. But again, when you try to organize, form trade union and build an organization, you will be faced with pressure and repression and resistance from the system, which is still mostly representing the interests of capital and corporations. Still, we've seen so many times, so many cases in so many countries, examples when workers were able to overcome this resistance from the capital, build the organizations and change the society step by step, improving the situation. We don't have anywhere in the world an example where we can say, oh, this is a country where social justice is really, fully functioning, because the concept of justice is also changing. We're adding new elements to this, which is normal. And this should be the process in development. And we can only develop our society by the old and very well traditionally known method, organizing.
Thanks a lot, Kirill. Yeah, I mean, the trade unions have been at the forefront of the social movements worldwide ever since we've been talking about social movements, for sure. You were now referring to something that we discuss as corporate capture, I think, which has not only been a problem in the economic system in general, but it's also a problem at the UN level, let's say. So what do you think, despite like big corporations that are trying to minimize workers' rights, also gaining ground at the international level, what could we do, like we as civil society or as workers' movements, to gain back ground, like to recapture the field, like particularly here in international Geneva, to strengthen our voice in this international sphere? What do you think, Baba?
Thank you very much, Eva. That's a very important question and an issue of concern. Corporate capture, the corporatization and commodification of our social life, and they're all part of a broader agenda. They're all part of the neoliberal paradigm of capitalist development. And an important fact is that in the late 70s and the early 80s, we had a gradual reversal, in fact, even if not in words, of quite a significant extent of what the UDHR tries to capture as the spirit of, to draw from Ken Loach, the spirit of 45. And this was also, don't forget, it was within the context of the UDHR. I mean, that this spirit of 45, that you had the emergence of the welfare nation states in Europe, the decolonization process in the global south, and things like the covenants on political and civil rights and economic, social, and cultural rights, and so on and so forth. But for workers, yeah. And within that was when efforts at full employment came in. That was when things like unemployment benefits came in, and so on and so forth. But with neoliberalism, these have been chipped away gradually but steadily for precarization of work, for labor market flexibilization and deregulation. And all these undermine the rights of workers. Now, my own take is this, and it sort of takes us back to the earlier position. You see, we have a saying where I come from, a Yoruba saying that when the child falls down, it looks forward with the view of to continue running. When an elder falls down, you look back to understand what caused the fall and, you know, the trajectory of your movement to the point of the fall. The spirit of 45 came out of a class struggle that demanded much more, that demanded fundamental changes. It brought about institutional power, and which I think to some extent became, if not dominant, almost as significant as organizing power. And also not along with the organizing, the ideation. What are we organizing for? You know, there were demands for post-capitalist reality of humankind. 45. So I'll sum up here in terms of how I think we take things forward with an analogy a metaphor I often use, of which is that, look, is like if you are in hell and you try to ask the devil to make the portion of hell where you are cooler for you, the devil realizes that you are not serious, you know. But when you fight like hell to get out of hell, he is ready to negotiate for a cooler corner for you. That's what happened in 45. In a sense, that's what happened even with the ILO. We need to stop limiting our demands to the commonsensical, which the corporations, which the representatives of this exploitative system constrain us within, to demand more radical expressions and implementations of our rights economically, socially, culturally, and politically.
Kirill, what do you think? How could we bring about these radical changes that are needed?
Well, I don't have solutions, but I agree we have to do something. And just to add to the complicated picture on the political rights and political issues, which we include in the list of human rights, and look at the UN system. Many people say, well, the system doesn't function well, it doesn't work. But in reality, United Nations is United Nations. These are the governments which make the United Nations. Look at what is happening in different countries on the governmental level. Most countries, in very many countries, the politics is now taking over. The power is in the hands of people who place a national or own egoistic interest above the interests of own people. And of course, the weakness of the UN system globally is a result of the weak social justice or justice agenda at the national level. How did we arrive to this situation? Let's ask ourselves where the working class have the power to influence these governments. And looking at the countries in Europe, what we can see, where is the working class here? This is mainly made of people who came from other countries. That the working class is predominantly migrant workers. Migrant workers have no political rights in the country where they arrive. They don't vote, they don't elect. That's one of the reasons why we have this weak policy at the European and the international level, because the working class is actually deprived of the right and opportunity to impact the influence on the politics at the national level. And as a result, the working class interests are not moved above the national borders to the international level. So this is one of the questions for us to address. How do we re-empower the working class, taking into consideration that the current system does not allow us to make influence on itself? And that's just one of the questions. There are others, of course, but I'm looking at the picture of Comrade Baba and talking about migrant workers. We are not only talking about migrant workers which already arrived in the country, but so many people who represent the working class are now on the move in a very, very risky path to a place where they consider to be safe, but then also with an understanding that they will not have political power in the countries where they arrived.
Thanks a lot, Kirill. I think this is a very important point. And I mean, I think that also says that organizing must more than ever take place not only at the national or regional, but at a global level. And Baba, you were before referring to a global campaign that referred to the right to health that you were part of. What kind of campaigns could we imagine to address like issues like the one that Kirill just described?
Yes, thank you very much. I'll start from like the issue Kirill described and our experience as PSI. One of the things we did as a project that unfortunately it hasn't been sustained, you know, some of the vagaries of projects that was we came up with the what we call PSI workers, migrant workers passport. What it was, I mean, of course, we didn't have the power to issue passport like countries, but what it did was this. It enabled members of affiliates of PSI in countries of origin to not only better know the rights and how to go about enjoying this in countries of destination, but also to be able to link up with the unions to give them to support them as needed. So it aided the integration. There were a couple of I mean it was a couple of select countries, and it was very, very useful. Even the process of the work of advocacy for it within the unions, both in the global north and the global south, destination and origin, it enabled more workers to appreciate the intricacies of, you know, migration, the challenges of it, and how to come out stronger with solidarity. So for me, it's something that we've been looking at, that, I mean, something that we need to still come back to. And I think it was, then I was still in the affiliate in Nigeria, and I know the impact, how useful it was for us then in the Nigerian workers migration working group, which I co-chaired. Now on the issue of the experiences with the Right to Health campaign, it was a 3-year campaign, and we did manage to challenge a number of not just violations. Let me put this: we tied several threads together. One, starting with countries where you did not have these rights where you had this right being denied to, like, migrants, and where you had even, and this is part of the broader context of politics now. Like, I'll give an example: South Africa, where the then Minister of Health during the campaign was saying the reason why South Africans were not getting universal health care was because of these illegal migrants. You know, we managed to mobilize the resistance to this, along with other people on ground, of course, in South Africa. And then, quite importantly, circling the issues back to the issue of the right to health, it was that we managed to underpin the closely related links between the right to health of the populace. And the right to a well motivated and adequately staffed health workforce. And it was also during this period that we had, and this goes into policy intervention within the United Nations system. We worked in a number of commissions and guideline development groups of the World Health Organization related to this, including the former General Secretary Rosa Pavanelli being a commissioner on the United Nations Health, Employment and Economic Growth Commission, which established, that investment in the health workforce is not simply expenditure. Spending on health workforce spending is not mere expenditure, but an investment, and that it is not just enough to have enough health workforce, which the world does not have, because some 18 million shortfall was projected by 2030. It has been cut down to 15 million, which is still quite significant, and over 80% of those in the global south. But that it is not just enough to think of filling the gap of this, but that it has to go with decent work. And we also then use that opportunity to send out the message that decent work goes beyond decent working conditions, workplace safety, which are all important. But you talk of the decent work agenda, and which entails, amongst other things, the right to organize, the right to social dialogue, the right to voice. These are fundamental rights that workers delivering health services, but workers in general must have. So for us, this is how the issue of the right to health as a right in itself and workers' rights within the broader scope of universal human rights merge.
Thanks a lot, Baba. Kirill, do you have a campaign, global campaign similar to the one that Baba was describing now, that you launched as your organization or that you were part of, that you would like to describe for us?
Well, it will be difficult because we are running a number of campaigns, so it can take quite long. I will just say we have a website, so the information about these campaigns can be found there at iuf.org. These are campaigns which are targeting specific corporations which are violating human rights, which are violating the United Nations declarations of human rights and the fundamental ILO conventions. Since I understand that we're coming to the Indian word now, I would just want to conclude that the right to unionize is a fundamental right. It is different from other rights because it is a right which is enabling us to have access to other rights. Without an organization, everything which is spelled out on paper will remain on paper and not be in reality. So I think that 75 years after the adoption of the United Nations declarations of human rights, we need to make a bigger effort to actually make these rights the rights which are enforced. Organizing is the key element of this development, this mobilization.
Thanks a lot, Kirill, and thanks also for watching the time. Baba, you have the last word. You have two minutes to conclude, and then we hand over to the next session. And I would already now like to thank both of you for this interesting conversation in the early hours of Sunday in Geneva, in gray and cold Geneva. Yeah, but Baba, please, you have another 2 minutes to say some concluding words as well.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll be very brief. the rights are not rights are in a way where like they are in a way gifts, inheritances from the struggles of our forebears. And we need to build on this. And as workers have been at the fore of the struggles for both our own, the improvement of our lives and the betterment of the world for hundreds of years in capitalism. And we continue. We need to continue this, expand the rights, and also have a gift to coming generations in terms of a broader corpus of rights. And I just want to finally say thank you very much to Rosa Luxemburg-Struchtong for this great program, and to you, Eva, moderating us and all, and say it's a pleasure once again to see Kirill, my very good comrade. I haven't seen for years now. All right. Amandla.
Thanks a lot, Baba. Thanks a lot, Kirill, for having been with us here. And yeah, I'll make sure that we'll meet in person very soon. Okay, and I hand over to the next panel then.